I'm Bill Ferraroni, and I'm a psychologist here at the Health Center, and on behalf of the Quabbin Drug, the Q Drug, Quabbin Drug Response Unifying Group, and the Berry Health Center, I want to welcome everybody here for a presentation. We're very fortunate tonight to have Susan Krikorian and her daughter Kayla, who's going to give a personal account to talk about the Learn to Cope organization, what's going on in some of the different groups and resources available, and also to talk directly about drug abuse. So with no further discussion, let's give her a warm welcome.
Hi everyone. I'd like to thank everyone here for having me, and my name is Sue Krikorian, and I'm the Central Mass Regional Manager for Learn to Cope. I started with working for Learn to Cope last November, but I've been a parent of the group for 2.5 years. My daughter Kayla is in long-term recovery, and I'm going to let her give you her overall story after I get finished. Learn to Cope is a nonprofit organization. It's a peer-led support group for families with opiate addiction, any type of addiction, whether it be alcohol, other drugs, gambling. Our main focus, though, is usually opiate abuse. Go that way. We offer education, resources, peer support for parents, family members coping with a loved one's addiction, or for support for people who have loved ones that are already in recovery. Learn to Cope was started in 2004 by Joanne Peterson of Raynham, Mass, when she found out that her 18-year-old son was suffering from heroin addiction. She had no clue. She was probably like 90% of the families today that don't know their loved ones have problems. We fast forward 11 years. It grew from one small meeting in a very small room to now we have 17 chapters, 16 weekly meetings in the Commonwealth, 1 in Rhode Island, and 1 that's starting in Florida in May, and 2 that will be coming up in New Hampshire within the next few months, I believe. So we've grown. We also have a website that has 7,000 people on it daily. It's a website that is there for people all over the world. We have people from Hong Kong, Australia, England, not just Massachusetts. So this disease affects everybody. It doesn't discriminate. You find all walks of life on our website and at our meetings. So if somebody says to you, well, that's a poor man's disease, or it's people who don't have enough, they're wrong. Every person comes from a great home. They come from great parents. It doesn't discriminate. Everyone should know that they're not alone in the addiction. When you find out your family has an addict in there, you're not alone. Learn to Cope is a support group. There's a meeting, like I said, 17 different chapters. Tuesday through Thursday, they're held from 7 to 8:30. Each meeting consists of maybe around 30 to 100 members. That tells you how big of a problem there is in Massachusetts alone when you have that many people. So 17 times 100, figure it out. The members in the group share their personal stories. They come to get educated, to maybe just a hug, maybe to realize that they're not the only ones that are going through this. With addiction, there's a lot of stigma. We feel that we're the only ones that maybe this is going through, and you feel very alone. Learn to Cope will give you that sense of you're not alone. You can go to these meetings and you feel very, very comfortable when you walk in. All our meetings are confidential. Anything you say in the meetings will stay in the meetings. It's basically run like an Al-Anon or an Ar-Anon. You do not, once you leave, that's it. You don't speak of what you've heard in the meetings. Our meeting in Worcester was started about 3 years ago. We're up to 55 people usually a week and growing. We are moving our Worcester meeting from the Worcester Recovery Recovery Hospital to AdCare starting April 2nd because we've outgrown our room in the hospital.
And you also have a group in Gardner, is that correct?
Yep, we have a group. Central Mass has 3 meetings, one in Worcester, and that's held on Thursday night from 7 to 8:30. Gardner is on Tuesday nights from 7 to 8:30, that's at the Haywood Hospital. And Framingham has a meeting on Wednesday nights from 7 to 8:30, and that is at the Edward M. Kennedy Medical Center on Waverly Street. You can go to any meeting that you choose. You don't have to sign up to go. It's open to everyone. You can choose to go to every single meeting if you want. We don't say you can't go. You can go as many times. What we offer and what we teach, what we try to give our members is treatment resources. We invite professionals to come in from time to time. We usually have speakers twice a month. We will have somebody who's a professional who is in either a counseling position, doctors, maybe lawyers. We have had judges come in to speak to the group to educate the family members on not legal advice, but drug courts and what treatments maybe work for your child, or what kind of counseling you should seek for your child and yourself, because we found that if a family goes to treatment or gets into counseling or even comes to just a Learn to Cope meeting, just one person, they seem to get stronger, and that in turn helps their loved ones on their journey. If you're strong, you can put that towards your loved one. The resources we have also are always listed on our website. We have a website. It's www.learntocope.org. It's like a 24/7 meeting. You can go on and you can get resources. We also have a forum that you can sign up for, which is all confidential. You put your email in and you get a screen name. And that is like being in a meeting 24/7. If you have a problem, if you're wide awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and you need to ask somebody a question, you type it in and 5 minutes later you'll have your answer. It's a great resource for family members. We also like to say we offer a message of hope to everyone. We try to bring in people in long-term recovery to speak to the groups, because when a family member first comes into a meeting, you don't think there may not be any hope for your loved ones. You feel very alone, lost, not sure if your loved one is going to make it down the path, and we can't tell you if they will find recovery, if they'll stay in recovery, but we can be there and give you some hope, and that's what we pride ourselves on. We like to be there and just say, don't ever give up hope. A lot of people come in overwhelmed with nowhere to turn, and we're there for you, and we can give you stories. We can, when we have our speakers come in, they seem to touch upon the members, because it is hope. I know that when my daughter came in with some of her friends from the sober house that she was at, that was the most powerful meeting that we had, because we had a lot of families that were sitting there that night thinking, wow, I can't do this anymore. My kid's not going to get sober. I can't do it. And then you have 3 young ladies come in and they give their story, and each one of them has been sober for 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. People walk out saying, I think we can do this. We won't give up. We also try to teach with overdose prevention. Narcan, Learn to Cope is a Narcan pilot program for Massachusetts Department of Health. And what that is every member who walks into our meeting has the opportunity to become trained in using Narcan. And Narcan, if nobody knows what Narcan is, it's an opiate antagonist, and it reverses overdoses. We, as a pilot program, We have trainers that will take you aside, train you in this. You all go home with a kit with 2 vials of Narcan that can help save your loved one if you find them in an overdose. You get everything about this is confidential. We have secret ways of filling out papers. Nobody knows it's you. To date, we have over 35 saves in Learn to Cope. In our Worcester chapter, we had a mother who had gotten trained, was in Honey Farms, and a car pulled up beside her, and the girl was screaming, "Oh my gosh, my girlfriend is overdosing." The mother had it in her pocketbook, went to work, administered it, and saved the girl. We also have a girl that comes to our Worcester meeting that she was saved with Narcan. So it really, and once she was saved, she went into treatment, and she's now in long-term recovery. So it does work, Narcan works, and I'm so grateful that now all of the EMTs and police and CVS and Walgreens is carrying it, because it's just a lifesaver. It can help save a life. If you don't have it, we like to say, if you don't have Narcan, that's okay. It's totally up to you. But if you ever find a loved one who isn't breathing, just breathe for them until the EMTs come. We like to stress that. It is, as I said, free, and it's confidential. What we do is, once we get trained, if you do use your Narcan, the only thing you have to do is report back to this, because the DPH does do statistics on this, and it's amazing how many calls they get and how many of their kits are used. So if you do use it, you come back to the meeting and you get another kit and you just report back. You don't go through a training again. I said before, we've saved about 35 lives. We also like to say that if your loved one is using and somebody is with him and they have to use Narcan, or if they have to call for an overdose call for EMTs, please tell them about the Good Samaritan Law. The Good Samaritan Law is, if they call, they cannot get arrested for trying to save a life. We like to put that out there because a lot of people don't know. If they have Narcan and they're with somebody who's using and they overdose, they won't call because they're afraid they're going to get arrested. So we like to spread that news in our meetings also. How to talk to your child or loved one about drug use. We first like to say, don't discuss an abuse problem while your child is high. If he comes home high, it's not the time to sit down and talk about it, because they'll be angry and could be hostile. It's best to just leave it be and talk to him maybe the next morning. Start by telling your loved ones that you love them very much and how much you worry about them. Describe signs that have led you to suspected drug use. Signs are flu-like symptoms, itchy skin, picking at their skin, sweating, watery eyes, runny noses, dark circles, tiny pupils, weight loss, slurred speech, drowsiness and nodding off. If you see this, chances are this is a child with an addiction. You need to address it. Changes in behavior are signs of drug abuse. Loss of interest in personal appearance and hygiene is a big one. Mood swings, secret calls, secret text messages. Not if you ask to see their phone, they don't want to show you. Things like that. Talking loudly, angry outbursts. Missing money and valuables is a big thing. You will start to notice that your valuables will be missing. You'll be missing money. If you leave money on the counter, it'll be gone in a flash. Lack of interest in doing things with friends is another thing to look for with your loved ones. There is a few things that you can also look for in your home. And if you see these, These are telltale signs. You might notice that you're missing all your Q-tips, or your Q-tips don't have any cotton on the end. They use the cotton when they load their needle. You might see white pills, pink pills, yellow or green. Those are Oxycontins, 20, 40, and 80. Heroin is a brown, powdery substance, kind of sticky, or white. You'll notice maybe all your pens in your house are going, or you find pens that have no inner parts, just like a straw-looking things. You'll find cut-up straws. You may find a belt with teeth marks. The belt with teeth mark they use to wrap. Burnt tin foil, needles, little tiny bags, spoons. You may find your spoons are missing. Cotton balls are missing. You might find a lot of soda bottle caps in their rooms or somewhere where you would least expect them. These are all signs that if you find them in your house, it may be time to talk to your loved one about drug abuse. We also like to try to explain to them the seriousness of drug abuse. It's hard when they're already into using drugs to try to explain that because it's not really going to sink in, I don't feel. I think talking about drug abuse is a prevention thing. When they're in the realms of addiction, have the talk, but it's going to be hard to get through. Listen and ask them what they want out of life. Do they want to be, nobody wants to be an addict, so what do you really want out of life? Do you want to become a nurse, a doctor? What would you like to do with your life? Follow your dreams. Give them a little hope that there's still chance that they can become whatever they dream. Guide your child to consider consequences of drug abuse on their goals. You know, if you are an addict and you don't get into recovery, how are you going to establish your goals? How are you going to get there? With treatment, you can pursue a very fulfilling life. You can also say to your loved ones, explain that you want to meet with a doctor or a drug counselor to get assessment on their addiction. You can go to their primary doctors, sit down, have a talk with them, explain to what's going on. If they refuse to, go yourself, get educated. As a parent, you don't have to take your loved one with you. You can go talk to a doctor and say, this is what I think. I think my child or my loved one is abusing drugs. What do I look for? What should I do? How can I help them? Supervise your children more closely. And I know that everyone in this group, including myself, had always supervised my child very closely. So this, I know we already do this, but take away some of the things that make addiction a little bit easier. And we like to say the 4 C's: cash, cars, cell phones, and computers. Because if they have cash, they can get drugs. If they have cell phones, they can call their dealers. If they have computers, they can contact their dealers. Cars, they can drive there. Doesn't mean it's going to stop them, but it's going to make it a little bit harder. If your child denies using despite the evidence, insist on a drug test. At Learn to Cope, we sell drug tests for $15. It's a 12-strip, and it tests for opiates and cocaine, amphetamines, benzaprines, oxycontins, barbiturates. There's 12 things that it does. So this is another item that we do get for our members. If they refuse a drug test, then chances are you have your answer right there. Okay, we have it here. It includes 12 drugs, opiates such as heroin, codeine, morphine, oxycodone, hydrocodone, benzaprines, which are your lorazepams, Ativans, marijuana, THC, synthetic marijuana, amphetamines, and methamphetamines, all in this one little test. As a parent or a loved one, the best thing to do is get educated. Come to Learn to Cope meetings. We can help you. We will tell you how to educate yourself on drug abuse, on what to do, how to handle your child. Many of us that have come to Learn to Cope, when we walk in, we're just so overwhelmed you don't know what to do. You really don't know what to do. You don't know what path to take. I know from my own experience, I handled it all the wrong way. I wish I had Learn to Cope. I found Learn to Cope when Kayla was in a sober house for 2 months. Prior to that, it had been 6 years that I would talk to friends. But when you're going through this and you're talking to friends who don't have a child or don't have addiction in their family, they kind of just look at you like, But when you go into Learn to Cope or someplace that people are dealing with it, it's like a sense of relief, because you can start talking and they don't look at you like you have two heads. They fully understand what part of the path you're on and where you're going. So get educated, read up on it. There's Google things. There's a lot of books on addiction that are written by parents just like you or I, and it hits the nail on the head. Find treatment. The substance abuse hotline is 1-800-327-5050. You can call there and they will point you in the right direction of how to get treatment. How do you get treatment? What do you do? People don't know that. Okay, I'm going to send my kid to Detox and then they're going to come home and they're going to be better. It doesn't work that way. 5 days is not enough. You need at least Detox, an inpatient treatment center for 30 to 90 days, sober living. Learn to Cope believes that there's all kinds of recovery. It doesn't mean that you go to an outpatient. It doesn't mean that you do the 12-step. Every type of recovery is going to work for one individual. So there's not one right way of recovery. There's many ways. And when you call or when you come to the meetings, you'll find that, because in each meeting, you know, we don't have all parents that their kids went to 12-step, or we don't have every parent that went to IOP, which is an intensive outpatient. Everybody's different, so it works. Whatever is going to work for your loved one, they have to find that in their own time and own way. Get support for yourself and for other family members. Addiction affects every part of the family. It's not just the addict themselves. It's the brothers, it's the sisters, it's the grandparents, it's mothers, fathers, it's everybody. So we find that when they get into treatment, or even before they get into treatment, it's good for the family members to take care of themselves. Because we as parents enable. We don't think we're enabling, but we do. Even by saying to her, I'll do your wash, that's enabling. Oh, I'll pick that up for you. That's enabling. As parents, we try to protect. So getting into a group of people that are going through this, you come together and you realize that, oh, I guess I am enabling. But we had one man say last week, and I love it, he said, you know, when I first came here, I was a wimp. I could not say no to my daughter. I just was not strong. He said, but I told her last week, I'm not backing down. I'm doing the right thing. I have 60 people behind me to make me strong, and that's what I do. That's why I come to Learn to Cope. And it's the truth. You have a network of people. You're not alone. So making a decision, you at least can run it by 60 people. Am I doing the right thing? Do you think this is going to work? How else should I handle it? You get so much out of these meetings. So get support for yourself and your family. As I said before, we have the Learn to Cope website, which is www.learn2cope.org. It's a 24/7 meeting. There's also tabs for treatment centers, there's blogs, there's phone numbers. Use it as a resource. And if you have any problems of trying to get into treatment or finding your way of going down that path, we have phone numbers. You can call the office. That also has a crisis hotline, and I have cards over there that you can use. You can call me at any time if you need help. And you just have to remember there's hope, and no one's alone in this. Even though you think you're alone, there's many of us out there that will help you, and we'd be certainly glad to sit with you and put you on the right path. I don't know how to get out of that. So lastly, a few things. If you know your loved one's using, get yourself educated, learn about the disease of addiction. Find treatment. Call the Massachusetts Substance Abuse Hotline. Be ready in case of an overdose. Please come to a meeting and get trained on Narcan. It is free. If you have an active person in your house, we recommend you do this as soon as possible, just to have it. And get support. Come to a Learn to Cope group. Whatever support group is going to work for you, just like whatever treatment will work for your child, find it. It'll make everything a little bit easier. I'm glad that I was able to share with you. I hope I covered everything. If I didn't, I will take questions either now or after my daughter speaks. And that's it.
I just wanted to let people know, if they didn't know, that there's a standing order at the very pharmacy for Narcan, so anybody can go in and get Narcan.
Yes,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Anyone
can go in. There's a standing order, and what happens is when you get the kit, you're going to see a little white, and I can send this around. You'll see a little white tab on the box, and what this is your standing order. This is your prescription for Narcan. That tells you if you get stopped, I can have this. I've been trained. You do have to get trained. I don't know how they're doing it.
I'm not sure.
They do the training at the
pharmacy?
At the
Kind of
pharmacy.
like when you get like a regular prescription, they ask like, do you know how to take this? They do it just like that.
Right.
I have another question about this Narcan.
Mhm.
Is that just for like heroin or cocaine?
It's only for opiates.
So heroin, Percocet, Oxycodone.
And it's non-abusive. It can't be abused. It will not hurt anybody. If you took this, if a child got a hold of it, sprayed it up their nose, sprayed it on their skin, it's not going to hurt. The only thing it's going to affect is it's going to help reverse an opiate overdose. That's it. So I could take one and use it right now, and it won't do anything to me. And like I said, it is free. The CVS or wherever it is in the pharmacies, you're going to have to go in, you're going to have to show your insurance card, and it's running about $40 to $60 now. That's great if you're in a pinch, if you need it, absolutely get it there. But if you have time to come to a meeting and you can get it for free, we're more than willing to sit down and train you. It's like a half-hour training. That's it. Trying to think what else I need.
Is there like a time frame? When a person overdoses,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know how long they've been in this state,
I mean, you can always give it, like if you're unsure, like we said, it can't hurt anything. But the biggest thing is even if they do like wake up from an overdose and they're like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine, leave me alone, because they're probably going to be angry. Then you want them to go to the hospital after, because an overdose can still occur after you've given Narcan. So hours after, depending on how much substance is in the body, an overdose can still happen later on. So it's always best to go seek further help afterwards.
Heroin, they can continue to overdose for 12 hours. Methadone, it's for 24 hours. So it's always good. And when you do use your Narcan, they wake up and they're not very happy because you just took away their high, and they want to get high again. What we tell when we do our training is, by the time you get your second dose in, if you need that, the EMTs are there, just let the EMTs do their job. And this is all, everything about Narcan when we train, it is probably between 30 and 40-minute training session that we go through everything. And then we like to say, go home, read your little pamphlet, because when I'm sitting there training people, it's very overwhelming. So we instruct you how to use it. We tell you all the necessary steps you have to do, but I also say go home and read up on it, because sitting up there, I know when I was trained, it was really overwhelming. So if you do come, just keep that in mind. But please, if you need Narcan, tomorrow night in Gardner we'll be there. Thursday in Worcester we'll be there. Somebody is always training Narcan at one of our meetings. Okay. Well, I guess I'll introduce my daughter, Kayla.
So hi, I'm Kayla. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic in long-term recovery. So for that means for me that I'm almost 2.5 years sober. So I just like to explain like how I kind of figured out I was a drug addict and an alcoholic. So somebody once explained to me that my addiction was like an allergy. So if somebody is allergic to peanuts, and they put peanuts into their body, you don't know what the allergy is going to look like. You don't know if it's going to be hives, or their throat's going to close up, or they're going to go into shock. You have no idea what it's going to look like. For me, with my addiction, if I put drugs or alcohol into my body, I don't know if I can just put the drug down the next day and be fine. I don't know if I'm going to go out and be partying all night, risk getting a DUI, or I don't know if I'm going to be stealing out of somebody's purse by the end of the night. That's how my addiction looks. So starting off, I remember, I think I was an alcoholic and an addict from being like a very little kid. I remember always being uncomfortable in my skin, always thinking like, I don't belong here, I don't fit in with these girls, they're prettier than me, they're faster than me, never thinking I was good enough at any sports, and I could never figure out what was actually wrong. I remember going to sleepovers and like waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning and calling my mom and being like, you gotta come pick me up right now. Like, I wanna come home. And I always remember I didn't wanna go to school. School was very hard for me. I always wanted to stay home or fake being sick. And another big thing for me, lying. When even from a very young age, I remember always lying. Like, I will lie about the littlest thing. Like, I cleaned my room. If you walked upstairs, my room would be dirty. Or I did my homework, I get my grades back and my grades reflect that I hadn't done any homework, I hadn't studied. And I remember it was just like a regular thing, and I could remember asking myself why do I always lie? And saying in my head, like, I don't want to lie, but why do I always lie? So going into middle school, I didn't feel comfortable. When it was time to go to high school, I decided to go to a vocational school because I thought, like, maybe I'll fit in there. Maybe I'll find people to fit in with there. I started doing drugs when I was a freshman, and I liked it. People paid attention to me when I did drugs. I was the only girl who did them. I prided myself on, like, keeping up with the boys and being able to, like, outdrink all my other friends. That was, like, I felt good when I could do that stuff. So through high school, I still continued with like never wanting to go to school, trying to figure out, like, I always wanted the easy way out on everything. Anything that makes me uncomfortable, I don't want to have to deal with it. Extra work, I don't want to deal with it. And I just I always just remember the uncomfortable feeling that I always had. And that's the biggest thing for me. I always felt like I just didn't belong. So I remember going to the doctor and saying like, oh, maybe you have like ADHD or maybe you have depression. And when I would get the medicine, I'd be like, okay, this is going to make me feel better now. Like, I'm going to feel okay. And I remember taking the medicine and I'd be like, I still don't feel better. Like, what's going on here? Like, why isn't this stuff working? I ended up graduating high school, going to college for maybe a semester or two, and when I went to college, it was like the same thing over and over again. I always want to do the next step that I think people want me to do. I never really did what I wanted to do. So I remember thinking college is the next right step, so I went and I failed out of there pretty quickly. So I decided to become a hairdresser. And this is when I picked up my opiate addiction for the first time. And I remember taking opiates for the first time and being like, oh my God, this is what I was missing. Like, this is the feeling that I was missing. I felt whole. I felt like I belonged with all my friends. I felt like I could talk to people. And for me, it wasn't like, oh, I tried opiates one day and then I tried it the next weekend. And maybe like a few weeks down the road, I tried it. I tried it, and then I tried it again the next night, and I tried it again the next night, and it just went from there. So over the years through my addiction, I kind of lost like what happened during what year. It was kind of all a blur. I know that I went to Detox 2 times, well 3 times. The 3rd time is when I got sober. The first time I went, it was the tactic to try to scare me straight. And I got sent to like a really grimy detox, and I remember saying to myself, I don't belong here. Like, look at these people, they live on the street, I do not belong here. I have a job, I have a home, I have people who love me, like these people, I'm not them. And I came home right afterwards, and I truly, in my head, every time I wanted to get sober, in my head, I said, like, I want to get sober. Like, if you put a lie detector test on me, I would have passed it. I wanted to get sober, but when it came down to like the nitty-gritty of it, I couldn't handle it. I didn't know what to do. So I came home after my first detox. 2 days later, I was getting high again. So months would pass. I did all sorts of treatment, and one thing that I do like to say, the way I got sober is the way I got sober, and like my mom said, there's a million different ways for people to get sober. My story is just what worked for me, and that's how I share my experience. So I went on Suboxone. That didn't work for me. I would get the Suboxone and I would sell it to get high. I went back into Detox. I don't remember when it was. And I was told I couldn't come home afterwards. I had to go to further treatment. So I said, fine, I will go to 30 days of treatment that I choose. And I put my foot down, and that's what I was going to do. And I walked in there saying, only 30 days, and then I'm coming home. While I was there, it was suggested that I go to sober living. I wanted no part of it. I have a good home to go to. I can do this on my own. I'll be okay. That didn't work for me. I came home. I would get high here and there. I would get some clean time. I'd get high here and there. And it ended up all crashing down on me at one point. So at this point, I had thought that I was ready to move out on my own. I had moved into an apartment. I just bought a new car. And I really thought all this stuff was going to help keep me sober. I thought, like, the payment of my car, I won't have enough money for drugs, so I won't be able to do them because I'll pay my car payment. And I got a credit card, and I was like, oh, this will help me pay all my bills that I have now that I'm living on my own. And I'm living in this apartment, and I can handle all this freedom. So I start drinking again. And I remember the time that I started drinking again, because I had planned it for like weeks in my head. I'm going to go out with my friends, and I'm going to have 1 glass of wine. And I remember thinking in my head, just 1 glass of wine. And I remember I took the first sip, and the only thing that ran through my head was, it's on now. And I got cut off by the end of the night, and I came home, and I remember my mom saying, are you drunk? And I was like, nope, not drunk at all. And I can still remember it clear as day. So I'm living in an apartment, and I'm getting drunk every night, and I have a boyfriend at the time. And I'm the kind of alcoholic who buys a 6-pack on my way home from work. I drink half the 6-pack and fill the fridge up with the ones that I drank earlier that day so that my boyfriend didn't know that I was drinking. And he's an alcoholic too. So I'm hiding my alcoholic tendencies from the alcoholic that I'm living with. So everything kind of comes crashing down, and I decide that I'm going to move back home with my parents. And my biggest thing was, when I move home, I won't do drugs anymore because my parents, I would never do that to them again. I will never ever do that to my parents again. Not only am I doing drugs, but I'm stealing their jewelry, and I'm stealing out of their house, and now I've robbed them blind, and I'm still doing drugs, and I'm trying to keep my life together, which is crumbling down on me. And it all crashes down one day when the debt collector calls and says my car is going to be repossessed. And that was like my end of the road. I had no more options. I was tired. Living as a drug addict was working for me, but living without drugs just wasn't working for me either. And I was like kind of at this crossing point of what do I do? So I go and I go to Detox, and I didn't have any options at this point. I didn't get told like, oh, you could go to this detox or this detox like before. It was whatever bed's open, you're going there today, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. So I go, and I'm back at the grindy detox that I went to the very first time. And now, when I went the first time, I was really comfortable when I was there. Like, I hadn't really done that many drugs, so what they gave me there, I felt good. When I went this time, I was incredibly uncomfortable. Like, I had a really big habit at this point. I was doing lots of drugs, and I remember, like, I didn't say one time, like, these people aren't like me. Never once did I say that. Because, like, at that point, yeah, I've stolen from my mother, and I've pretty much almost been homeless, and I've done things at my job that I never thought I would ever do. Like, there's a list of things that I said I would never have done, and I did it. So now I'm like, okay, I'm no different. Like, that was the first thing that changed. I was like, I'm no different. So there was no option of me coming home at all. And so I go to the same treatment I went to the second time, which was a 30-day, 12-step program. And I go, and I was very, very sick when I left Detox. Generally, that's why they say, like, it's good to go on to sober living or further treatment, because when you come out of detox, you're not always fully detoxed. So I was sick, like, I would sweat through my clothes if anyone said anything that had any sort of emotion. So, like, if somebody made me laugh or I felt uncomfortable, I would just sweat right through my clothes. Or I couldn't sleep at night. I would sleep, like, 20 minutes a night. And that was, like, huge for me when I would get that amount of sleep. I'd have restless legs, I'd be hot, I'd be cold, I'd be in and out of the room. I couldn't sit still. But the thing that changed for me was that I said, just one more day of this and it'll be over. And I said that for the next 2 weeks. And finally one night I fell asleep, and the next morning I woke up and I'm like, oh, well, I kept the same clothes on all day, I'm doing good. And I'm not going to cry every time somebody says something kind of mean. And, like, stuff started to kind of even out. And I went on to sober living after, where I still wanted to, like, hold on to, like, any will that I had left. I was like, when I go to sober living, I'm staying there for 3 months. And I didn't stay for 3 months. I ended up staying for 9 months. I ended on being house manager, but even after being there for 9 months, I still had this old habit of saying, like, what's next? What will people be proud of me for doing? So I decided, when I decided to be house manager, I signed up for a commitment that I was going to be there until February. And November rolled around, or no, I think September rolled around, and I was no good to the girls. I wasn't doing them a service being at the house anymore because I just wasn't there for them anymore. I was ready to be out on my own, and I was just not available for them. So instead of taking the time in the beginning and thinking, like, is this what I want to do for the next step, I just jumped in and said, yes, I'll be house manager. What I should have done was let somebody else do it so that they could have had the opportunity. It was a great opportunity for me, but that was probably one of the biggest learning moments that I had, that, like, it's okay not to please everyone. So everyone always says, like, when you get sober, you can never live where you lived before. And my biggest thing when I got sober was I don't want to have to stay like in an AA meeting every night of the week, like drinking crappy coffee and eating donuts. Like that is not for me. I'm not a meeting kind of girl. I don't like to smoke. Like I'm like I don't fit in there. Come on. So when I decided to move home, my mom was really nervous. So I moved back to the same place that I used to use. And I wanted to be, when I talk to people about being sober, I wanted to be able to go anywhere, anytime, and feel comfortable being anywhere. So I can say that I've been to more bars now that I've been sober than I ever did while I was drinking. I live a couple towns over now to the town that I used to use in, and I still hang out with my group, not people who are using, but the group of friends that I had before. And this was huge for me because I liked where I lived. I'm a country girl, and when I went to sober living, I went to Dorchester. So like that, I became like a city girl, and it was not for me. I rode the T for the first time when I got there, and I was like really amazed that people actually did this on a daily basis. So yeah, I moved home, and when I left Boston, this was really huge for me. Whenever I left a job, like I would leave like right before I got fired. Like I would like skeet out and be like, yeah, they're being awful to me, I need to leave now. And I'd find a new job where people didn't really know my reputation. When I left Boston, my boss begged me to stay and said that he would pay for my train to come back every single day. So that was huge for me. I've been at the same job now for a little over a year since I moved home. I just bought my first house this year. I don't know, I speak with Learn to Cope probably a few times a month. And for me, like some people, like I said, like meetings weren't my thing. Some people go to meetings and that helps them. For me, it's doing outreach like this, speaking. I also work with the Worcester Department of Public Health, running an active community team, which helps get information out into the community on overdoses and things like this, providing events, and it's really awesome. If anyone wants any more information later, please come up and let me know. So for me, this is what keeps me sober. So if anyone has any questions, honestly, you can ask me anything. I don't care at all. Feel free.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
Everyone always says like, well, like if your child is like actively using, once the parent goes to Learn to Cope, their using career is kind of like, it's done.
And it is. It really is, because you learn that what we're doing, you know, when you're alone, you enable, and you enable, and you enable. If you're enabling, why are they going to want to get sober? They have a roof over their head, they have a shower, you're cleaning up after them, you're feeding them. But once you stop that, and it doesn't mean that, you know, you do tough love. Tough love doesn't mean that you throw them on the street and forget about them. That's not what it is. Tough love is not enabling. It's getting strong. It's getting to say, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not giving you money.
Even now,
Go ahead.
even now, like I find myself like, my washing machine broke when I first moved into my house, and like I was like, oh, can I come do my laundry at your house? And I like brought all my laundry over, and I was like, oh, I can't get there. Can you do it?
And I would do it.
And she did it. And I was like, oh, this is like easy. Like this, I didn't learn how to do laundry until I went to sober living, and that was the biggest thing about sober living, was like I didn't know how to live before. Like my mom's not a bad person. She just wanted to do good, like the things that she thought were right, and it's hard because nobody gives you a manual on what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do for your child. And I just didn't know how to do a lot of things, like putting dishes in the sink. I thought they magically went into the dishwasher. Like I didn't know.
But also,
Laundry becomes folded by itself.
but also too, what I didn't realize, and we had talked about this afterwards, was when I would say to Kayla, oh, I'll do it for you, or I'll make you dinner, or I'll do this, she was actually hearing, well, I'm too stupid to do that. I don't know how to do this. I can't cook anything. So, you know, we think we're protecting and we're helping, and they're hearing something totally different. So when I am facilitating a meeting and I have a parent come in and say, you know, but I do this and I do that, and I say to them, you know what I learned? And it was kind of late. When I was saying, I'll do your laundry, I'll go to the bank, I'll make your supper, I was saying to her, you just don't know how to do it. So what's that instill? I can't do anything.
Kaylin, you said it began like in probably middle school, high school, freshman year of high school. So what would you say to all of us who have children in those age groups or grandchildren in those age groups to, if you get that sense that your grandchild or child is like that or in that position, what would help out?
I think like education is the biggest thing, and that's why I do this.
Education
Education
through the school
for,
system?
Yeah, through the school system, but not all school systems welcome these kind of things coming into the school. It's kind of like, it's one of those things like there is a stigma on it, but there isn't. It's becoming a problem, so we're trying to make people more aware. But just educating yourself. Even if you think your child may have a problem, your grandchild may have a problem, just go to a Learn to Cope meeting and you can get so many resources. That's why Learn to Cope is so amazing, is that like, even if you just have the slightest hint, like nobody's gonna say like, you can't come here because of that. Like you can go just to get educated, and educating your children, because kids don't know like overdose or withdrawal. Like they just think it's like something that their friends are doing. They don't know the consequences, and that was the biggest thing. I grew up, my mom's brothers and sisters were heroin addicts. I knew what drugs did. I was educated on like, drugs are bad, but for me, that never scared me. Drugs didn't scare me for some reason. So, yeah, that's, go ahead.
When she was born, because I did grow up with addicts in my family, I wanted to break dysfunction. I said, when I have this child, she's not going to become a drug addict. This is going to stop. I don't want this. Kayla never hung around at the mall. She never went out at night and hung downtown. She was into animals, and she was into bluebirds and different things like that. All the things that you think that are going to steer them away. So when I found out she was a drug addict, I was floored. Absolutely floored. She knew about overdoses. She had heard about them. She knew about drugs. Just get educated. I mean, and as a parent, you know, I mean, I used to say to my mother, why are you crying? It's not your fault. You did not make your kids addicts. But when it becomes your own, you feel that way. And it's very, very hard to break out of that. So the more education, the better. It's not 100% guarantee that your kid won't become an addict, but at least she knew, she had some background in it, and maybe that helped a little too. Okay.
Did you manage to escape this
Thank you,
without a criminal record?
Excuse me, what?
Did you get through this without getting a criminal record?
Yeah, I did. Oh, that was another big thing. So I thought I couldn't, so my drug of choice was Percocet. And I always thought that if I didn't, like, do heroin, or if I never used an IV, like, I was okay. And I thought, like, I never wanted to share my story because of that, but, like, pills are so prominent now, like, that leads to heroin use. And, like, it just goes to show, like, you don't have to go to heroin.
The other thing too is that we find is a lot of sport injuries. It starts there. Kids are getting hurt in school. They're getting hurt playing hockey or basketball or something. You go to a doctor, you believe your doctor, and you know, and you trust in your doctor. They hand them a prescription for Percocet or Vicodin, and you don't know whether your child has that addictive gene. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be prescribed it, but if your doctor says, okay, here's a prescription for 30, you might want to say, hey, could I just have a couple
And if we need more, we'll come back for more. Maybe they could do something like that. There is, it's a big thing with sports injuries. They're finding that the kids get hooked because they don't know if they're going to be an addict. Nobody knows they're going to be an addict. And then it's almost too late after that last script is over or something. And then they find, you don't know that they've become addicted to it. And then they go out on the street and they start to buy these pills. So whatever you can do to help out, you know, being a doctor, I mean, you just prescribe a little bit. Now that the prescription monitoring system is up, that I'm hoping that they'll really full force put that into works.
A lot of local places have drug takebacks now, like police departments and stuff. So if you do have stuff in your cabinet that you don't use, it's really important to get rid of it. Cause, yeah, that's awesome. So,
and actually, what I really was, I came to the town meeting, when was that? Way back in October. And I was very impressed by the town of Barry because of what the community was doing for this drug awareness in January. It was amazing. And the other part was that you were going into the senior citizen center and training them. People don't realize, senior citizens may not know. You know, they don't know. There's a lot of people that live alone. They get prescribed a drug. I mean, I know an older woman that we live near. She did overdose one day because she took this and then said, I can't remember. So she took another one. And then a couple hours later, she said, I don't think I took my pills. She took another one. So, and she didn't know what she was taking. So I commend the town of Barry for what you did with all of this. It was a big thing. I'm very pleased, and I wish more towns were like that.
I want to say one other plug for the town of Barry. I'm one of the psychotherapists at the Listening Center here in Barry. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing beginning in June, the flyers will go out with the high school program, is a group for teens that teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is a way that can help moderate some of those emotions that send kids to using drugs, or even using, you know, technology too much. But I've got a couple of sample flyers here with me in case anybody wants.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Yeah.
That's good, because that was part of my question, is like, how do we help those children starting in 5th, 6th grade and on, and how do we help them feel strong so that they are not pulled into something else? And you said you felt out of your skin, and how do we help them teach them to teach themselves that they are strong, that they can carry through, that they are their own person and they feel good in their own skin? You know, how do we do that to help? It's just as important as taking an MCAS test. You know, it's a balance. And we haven't learned that balance, and we don't have that in our schools.
It's honestly like an answer. Like, I don't think even if somebody approached me as a child that I couldn't, like, most children can't identify, like, what the feeling was. I just thought, like, okay, I'm an uncomfortable child. Like, that's just me. But, I mean, just, like, educating and giving more options of, like, what kids can do and, like, kind of getting rid of, like, I feel like bullying goes with it, all that kind of stuff, like, making people feel like you are your own person and it's okay to be different and you're not alone, and there's, like, so many things like that.
There's an organization that started because of a teen suicide. I think it's in Worcester, and I believe it's 365Z. And what they go by is one act of kindness. Do one act of kindness per day, and you'll change a lot of people's lives. So what they're saying is, even if you hold a door, if you smile for somebody, or if you see a younger person getting bullied, go over to that person, say, how are you doing? Do something nice for one person, and it trickles down. And that person that you've done something nice for will say, kind of be uplifted. Is it going to make them feel totally different? No, but it's going to make them know that somebody just cared about them. So this organization, it is in Worcester. I believe they have, I think it's 365Z. I'll try to find the information. I have a pamphlet and I'll send it to you. But doing something like that in the schools, maybe just do, you know, a month of, let's try an act of kindness for the day. See what happens. You know, let's see the change, and really monitor things like that. Any other suggestions?
One of the questions that I get frequently from parents who have kids that are also in recovery is what can they do to help prevent their loved one, their son, their daughter, their cousins, going back and causing them to relapse? Like, what are things that they have to look out for if they bring their child back home with them?
I think the biggest thing, like for me, right after I got sober, I couldn't come right back home. Which I know that Worcester is going to be opening a recovery high school, which will be open to surrounding towns, which is really good because there's not a lot of resources. Like there isn't sober houses for like 16 or 17-year-old kids. They can't live on their own. And it's like kind of like an AA-based high school. So it's like around being sober and graduating and things like that. The biggest thing for me was to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet. That I really think like that was the biggest key for me when I got sober. And when I was back home, I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet right away. The biggest thing when I got sober, an amends to my parents was like a living amends to never live on their dollar ever again. Like never live under their roof again, because I know as soon as I walk back in, I'm gonna use that. Like it sounds awful, but I'll use them in whatever way I can. And I'm almost 2.5 years sober. Like I know my brain now, and like kind of getting to know yourself, you kind of know like what habits you kind of fall back into.
And you're talking about teenagers, correct? Is that, or just?
Talking about anybody in general. Myself, I'm in recovery.
Okay.
I'm from Barry.
Yeah.
Same pretty much background.
And
But one of the things that I've been approached and asked by a lot of people is, you know, if they ask me to talk to one of their kids about something, right? Like, can you come talk to my 13, 14, 15-year-old kid? You know, and they go and get help or whatever like that, and they come back, they say, what can we do so they don't go back to it? Like, if they don't have the option to go to further treatment, if they don't have an option to go to a program or whatever because their insurance doesn't cover it and they have to come home to a small town like Barry, they need something to do.
They do, and I think that's where the town comes in. Maybe the town needs to have some kind of peer recovery centers, or there are peer recovery centers down in Worcester that they can go to. The high school is going to be tremendous. It really is. It's going to be a great thing. It's going to be up on West Boylston Street. It'll be opening, I believe, in August. I do have a meeting with a woman tomorrow that's heading up this. I'll find out more information. But there are recovery high schools. There's one in Springfield. There's one in Beverly on the South Shore. Is that South Shore? There's one on the South Shore. And in right in Boston. It's called the Ostigi High School. And if your child can get into that, even if you have to drive them back and forth, that's what I would recommend. Because now they're with a community of kids that have the same issues, and they can support each other. I think that was the biggest thing. That's why, you know, every time Kayla came home, I knew it wasn't going to work. It was just the same repetitive thing. But another thing a parent can do, when their child comes home, kind of try not go back to the way they were, change things up, let their child have some kind of responsibilities, you know, and consequences. If you don't do this, then you're going to pay the consequence. So you're teaching them that they have to be responsible for their actions, and there are consequences that come along with it if you don't do it. Another thing, though, is, and I used to do this to Kayla all the time. You all right? What's wrong? Are you okay? Are you high? Don't do that. It's not going to change anything.
for you being like in the community, people are like asking you, the best thing for you is like, I don't know what, if you're active in your community at all, like what you do, but that's the biggest thing, like starting, that's how I got involved with Learn to Cope and the Department of Public Health, because like I want to spread awareness to this, and if you're able to do that, that helps so much.
That's where I am right now. Actually, quick little background, like I'm from the town. I got in, I started smoking weed, got into opiates. I ended up shooting dope. I didn't have money coming in, so I had to do it on my own. I caught a felony. I was arrested, went to jail for 14 months. And while I was incarcerated, one of the articles that I read was in the Worcester Telegram about the Learn to Cope. So I reached out, and I was like probably 6 months in, 8 months in, so I kind of had a clear head in the sense of I I had plans. I was in that pink cloud where I had plans on what I wanted to do, and one of the things I wanted to do was give back to this town. So I reached out on my phone and I said, listen, can you get a hold of these people and try and see if we can figure something out? You know, I'm glad to see you guys here and glad to hear things, because that's something that I know is mentioned, that they want to do some sort of peer support in this town.
And that would be good. And even, maybe even just holding a small meeting once a week.
Well, we're very fortunate in Barry that we have 3 AA meetings and 1 NA meeting per week here, and we get all ages.
All ages, do you have, maybe you're young, how about starting a younger person's group?
Well, that's also, you know, that has been mentioned too, because we, in the NA scene of things, there's not a lot of younger people.
There isn't a lot of younger people, and I think that's, I mean, you used to go to some of those young people meetings and you thought they were all good. There is one in, was it Paxton they used to go to? What was the one that used to
There
go?
was one where.
It was on Worcester.
I know it's tough though for a lot of people out here because a lot of kids don't have their licenses. You know what I mean? So it's something that is beneficial to
Do you
us
know
all.
there's a
I'm
lot
gonna
of
pass
towns
this
that
around,
have
too, so
their
everybody
peer
signs it
recoveries
into it.
that they might go to a company that's turning in a van and ask for a donation or a cheap one, the town will buy it and use that for transportation for kids. AdCare has their own transportation, so if your child has to go to a meeting at AdCare, I don't have a ride, they'll come all the way to Barrington. Something like that. A peer recovery, it's called Everyday Miracles down in Worcester is a peer recovery center, and they do transportation. So transportation is a big thing.
And here we'll do that transportation during the daytime, but not at night.
Not at night, okay, yeah.
So yeah, just get, like, even if you get your face out there in the community, that was the biggest thing for me, was like getting my face out there in the community, and people like stop and ask for your help, and like the more resources, the more educated you are, the better you can help educate other people.
And I'd like to talk to you afterwards. If you're in long-term recovery, I would love to talk to you, because Learn to Cope invites people in long-term recovery to come speak. And even going by that, when they come in to speak, they learn a lot from the parents. So maybe you could come and we could, we'll talk about it.
Anytime.
I've noticed that you talk mostly about high school kids, but we have a huge problem in this area with people in their, not just their teens, but their 20s and 30s that are highly addictive. And it's not an easy thing
And that's where Learn to Cope would come in for the parents. Start with the parent. People, I think it goes kind of in like segments. You have 18 to 21-year-old kids that think they're invincible, then they don't need to get treatment. And then they go from 22 to 24 and they start to think about it. And then 24 to 28, they say, I have nothing. And then they'll want to get it. But I just feel that for us and a lot of people, being out of the geographical area that they're using in is the best thing.
Until you maintain like some sort of sobriety, like I said, I had to be comfortable with myself. It was 9 months that I stepped away from here, and I like slowly regained relationships. And there's so many resources. Like Massachusetts is doing so much now that like it's a little bit harder when it's an adult, because adults can do what they want. As soon as you turn 18, you kind of have like your free will of like, I don't need to go to treatment. But Learn to Cope can definitely show you like what direction, if you have a loved one that's over 18, like you can go for them.
Massachusetts is probably the best state in the United States for drug awareness, treatment centers, help. What we have here, Narcan, is not in any other states. They don't have it.
Like a lot of people don't know what it is.
Right. There's some starting to pick it up, but we're the first to have it. We're the first, Learn to Cope is one of the first support groups to be able to give this out to members. So be lucky that we're in Massachusetts. It is hard to get into treatment. I mean, it's not, you just don't call up and get in. It's hard, and the new opioid panel that's in with Charlie Baker,
the opioid panel that we started in Worcester, the Central Mass opioid panel. We're having our first meeting on the 30th of April, and we're going to work towards things. If you have suggestions, please take a card and send me some suggestions, and I'll bring them to the panel when I go to the meeting. But working together and finding new options and things, a community has to be involved.
And the more people who come out and like are heard, and people who stress that there needs to be more beds, the better chance that more treatment will open up and more like insurance funded places will open up, because that's the biggest thing. Like beds that are covered by insurance are really hard to come by because there's such an epidemic.
I think one thing that really stuck with me, to bring back to your panel, is the poster of what parents can identify. Because so many parents might not, because they don't want to see it, they don't want to, oh, there's a pen without the insides in it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's one, oh yeah, that, no big deal. But if those posters can become much more publicized, so that parents of even, kids in junior high, and they need to be able to say, oh my God. Because once you see it in front of you, it's a lot harder to ignore, and it's a lot harder to say, my kid doesn't do that kind of thing. But if you have all your Q-tips in your house with the tips missing, or
have one pen left.
or no pens, you get in your car and there's a pen in the side that doesn't have the, that is taken apart. Once those posters get out, it's like in your face.
I do have some handouts of that poster and some information on the sides, what to look for, the signs of drug abuse, what you can do for it, so please feel free to help yourself. I have a piece of paper with what Learn to Cope is all about. We also have a great, powerful letter from a dad, what Learn to Cope has taught him. It's a great letter. There's a meeting list, so please feel free to take those so you know where everything is. And come to a meeting. Get strong for yourself. You are going to be no good if you have an addict in your family. You're not going to be any good to them if you're weak and you don't know which way to go. You get strong, you have people behind you, and it's amazing how recovery can start once you say that little word, no. It's the hardest thing to say. Believe me, the day that I told her that I was done, it was really hard, but it just kept coming out of my mouth. I'm thinking to myself, where are these words coming from? But it had to be done. It had to be done. So I think and like I said, I didn't know Learn to Cope then, but I did have some, I have a sister who's 35 years in recovery, so she was there to help me. But Learn to Cope can give you it can make you powerful in a way, but a good way. And it teaches you how to handle them respectfully, because they are people. They're human. These are the people that we love and we live for. You don't want to fight all the time. You don't want to yell and scream. And I was never taught that. We went at it all the time. So now that I'm in Learn to Cope, I think I would be able to handle it a little bit better.
And just to also let you know that on April 8th, we're trying to have 2 meetings a month, so that we have a meeting at the Senior Center, and that's a meeting that anybody and everyone is welcome to attend. And we just have discussions about what we should do as a community to help each other out. And the second meeting, hopefully, we'll have be presenters. So our next meeting is April 8th, which is at the Senior Center, which is right down on South Barry Road at 6:30 p.m. And then we will continue to set up a goal of having a series of meetings with presenters, just like Learn to Cope has done, to help all of us out. And the reason this all began was it began 1 year ago when one of our very good friends, this young man, today is his anniversary, it's his 1-year death. And it's very hard on our community because there are young men who are very local, and I had all of these kids in school. And we just got together as a steering committee on July 5th and said we need to do something. We've had 4 deaths, you know, in between drugs and alcohol and everything. We need to help ourselves out as a community, and we need to help us out as a state. So we're moving ahead slowly but surely with this, and we've made a lot of improvements since we began on July 5th. So we've gone to lots of meetings in Recovery House. We were just in Greenfield last Wednesday and spent several hours at the Recovery House that's right there in Greenfield. Very great place. The state has offered 10 recovery houses. Greenfield is one of them, and they're all over the state. But it's $350,000 to run that place 6 days a week, to help people walk in off the street and just have a place to have coffee, use a computer, use a fax machine, have someone help you to know where to go next. And so I just want to thank everybody for coming. And if you just sign that form that just shows your name, we'll put you on a regular list and let you know when our next meetings are. And anything you can do to help us out, and we're called Q Drug. We want to work together as a unifying group to deal with the drug situation in town. But thank you very much for what you've done.